Welcome back, America. We're going to stay on this topic of anti-Semitism and intolerance on college campuses. Our next guest was sounding the siren long before most of us awakened to all of this extraordinary hate, intolerance, and censorship and anti-Semitism was growing on our campuses. Nicholas Giordano is a political science professor and a higher education fellow with Campus Reform, and he has been one of the most important voices in describing to America what's been going on our college campuses. He joins us right now. Nick, great to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You were warning of this moment a long time before a lot of us awakened to it. I think most parents now, particularly since October 7th, like, my God, what was going on at Harvard and UPenn? But you saw this coming for a long time. Is there a moment now of reflection on these campuses? Do you think some of the academia, some of the academic leadership realize that they have overplayed their hands?
I don't think they've come to that realization yet, but they soon will, because I do believe the reckoning has happened in higher education, and it's only going to get worse for them. When we look at college administrators, I mean, obviously ideology is heavily pushed throughout the college campuses, and the truth is that while I do believe some of the administrators should step down or be removed, it's not really going to change the toxic environment they've created, because there's a long line of administrators waiting in the wings that have been corrupted by this groupthink mentality that has been prevalent on college campuses. And I'm on the front lines watching as my profession is destroying itself. I mean, if you just look at the rabid anti-Americanism, the anti-Semitism that's going on, calls for genocide, these are the same universities that have created free speech zones on college campuses, put trigger warnings on the American flag. If you misgender someone, you could be in the administrative crosshairs and face disciplinary hearings. It really is stunning, but people are waking up to what's going on. And unfortunately for these colleges, they did it to themselves. They need to realize that. An academic institution should be about knowledge, learning, and instilling the idea of critical thinking, merit, and hard work. They've done the exact opposite. They've pushed ideology, a political agenda to indoctrinate students, to create an army of student activists. And now donors are starting to realize, so they're pulling back. You have companies, a new survey just came out, where over 50% of American corporations stated that in 2024, they are doing away with four-year degree requirements. Parents are reconsidering where they're going to be sending their children for the university. And so I think this is a real wake-up call to the universities. You better reform quick, or the higher education landscape is going to be radically altered in the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, there's nothing like losing your funding stream, your customer stream, and your donor stream to wake you up to that. You have done a lot of thinking. In fact, of all the people that I've had the blessing to interview on this, I think you've done the most thinking for the longest period of time on how to fix this. And I want to walk through some of the ideas that I think you've been developing. Let's start with the role that donors can continue to play. Obviously, there were some shock battles applied to Harvard and some of the other universities, UPenn, big, large donations pulled. But there still seems to be a role for the benefactors of universities to continue the pressure and not stop, not make this a moment, but make this a movement.
Well, when it comes to the donor movement, so over the short term, a lot of the Ivy League institutions, they're not going to feel much pain because they have billions of dollars in endowments funds that they could resort to. However, over the long term, the more donors that pull out, the more it's going to hurt these universities over the course of the long term. They're going to have to start thinking about cutting the amenities. And that's where a lot of the tuition cost goes, to the amenities. They're going to have to start cutting amenities. They're going to have to start cutting programs. If they don't have the donor class, well, that severely cripples the institution's ability to operate. And from what I'm hearing, all the departments that deal with the gifts that the universities receive, they're struggling. You know, they're trying to get some of the major donors on the phones, and the donors aren't even taking their calls.
Wow.
So it goes to show you that the donor class is very upset, and they should have been upset a long time ago, right? It shouldn't have resorted to the Hamas terror attacks and the anti-Semitism we're seeing. It should have been the anti-Americanism that we've been witnessing over the course of 2 decades.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. They're slow to the table, but they are at the table right now, which is interesting. Now, let me ask
Better
about
late than never.
Yeah, exactly. Let me ask you about another funding stream. The federal government is probably one of the largest dispatchers of money to universities. A lot of the research grants are now in the billions of dollars per year. Can Congress have an impact by tying future federal funds to the ability to keep free speech free, to fight anti-Semitism, put requirements on some of this money so that it's not just a free giveaway every budget cycle?
Absolutely. Congress plays a tremendous role. They control the purse strings. And I've been arguing for a long time that any university that violates our fundamental rights, the freedom of speech, the freedom to protest, and any university that engages with the federal government to build out a censorship apparatus should see their funding cut, and Congress should be proactive in this. Our own tax dollars shouldn't be used to silence Americans, and our own tax dollars shouldn't be used to promote hatred towards America. And that's exactly what the DEI industrial complex has done. They've created an entire system that's built on this idea of victimhood, where we're going to label people oppressors versus oppressed. We're going to put everyone into these tribes and let the tribes pit against each other and battle it out. A tribal society fails. We see that around the world. And I think Congress needs to take a long look at the funding stream that they provide to both private universities and public universities, because it's about time that the funds get cut. You know, Eisenhower warned that the higher education system is going to be corrupted through the federal funding mechanism. And so now maybe it's time we think about weaning these colleges and universities off the tax dollars when they're promoting the nonsense that we're seeing today.
Yeah, it's such a common sense idea, and yet it has been kicked down the line so often. Yeah, I mean, it is remarkable that it hasn't been a string that was pulled at sooner than this moment now. I want to turn to one other idea. It's obvious that the tenure that faculty sometimes enjoy have given them certain protections that they feel comfortable using their classrooms, not to teach anymore, but to indoctrinate. Is there room to create a surveillance system? Again, we don't want to be truly policing speech, but is there room for a surveillance system where real egregious violations of classroom indoctrination can get reported and then there be a disciplinary process? Is that something that's missing from either the nonprofit or the professional realm of education right now?
Well, what we're witnessing, professors have the idea of academic freedom. We get to delve into controversial topics. We're protected through academic freedom. However, we see academic freedom being applied differently depending on the professor and what they say. So, for instance, at Campus Reform, we reported on how a USC professor was suspended for calling Hamas a terrorist organization, saying that they're murderers and that they should be killed. Well, they were suspended, but other professors calling for a genocide have escaped without any type of academic disciplinary against them. So we see the double standard that's applied depending on what you're saying and what side of the political spectrum you may fall on. So there is room. I mean, when professors are overtly calling for a genocide against a group of people, well, they really shouldn't be in the classroom indoctrinating student bodies. And we see it's not. The education system's broken completely from kindergarten through college, and we see the ability to think critically doesn't exist. A recent poll just came out where 51% of those 18 to 24 said that Israel shouldn't exist. Yet in the same poll, 69% said that Israel had a right to exist. So you see that the students aren't even thinking about what they're saying, and it's a real problem.
Yep. That's the loss of great training. We stopped educating our students. Nick, you're always on the front lines in this. We are so grateful. Thank you for your time today, my friend. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Amanda will be rejoining me after these commercial messages.